Do you love the Tabernacle Choir? This year, the choir's music is everywhere you are. Listen to your favorite choir songs and music and the spoken word anytime you want on Alexa by simply enabling the skill.
Alexa, play music in the spoken word.
Now playing music in the spoken word.
You can also download the Tabernacle Choir app, subscribe to the choir on YouTube, listen on Spotify, and have access to all their wonderful music. Happy listening.
All right, thanks for joining us. Right now, we are going to talk some Utah football. It's not just all BYU here, because I bleed red. Absolutely, I bleed red. You can't argue. PK bleeds red. That's a fact. I'm speaking
Have we tested
factual.
this theory on air?
It's a fact. I bleed red. Cut me, Mick. I bleed red. Joining us now is our Utah Insider. You can read all of his stuff, all of his material, all the stuff he puts on his social media and at KSLSports.com. His name is Steve Bartle. Steve, good morning. Thanks for coming in. It is football time, and I know outside of your cute little family that I saw the other night, you live for this.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. Fall camp just a few days away. We're, 6 days from the first practice of fall camp under Morgan Scalley. Pretty exciting stuff.
Now, Utah, man, my gosh, you could set your watch by it every day. For the last 2 decades, we knew what it was going to be. It was a model of consistency. Kyle Whittingham, we all know what he's about, man, and he'll bring that stuff to Michigan, and away they go. But it's a new day at the U of U, so just your assessment of just the newness of it all. Now, it's not entirely new because you've got the ultimate Utah guy in Morgan Scalley, obviously, and he's been in the program, but he brings in some new guys, new coaching staff. For a program that has no change for 20 years, all of a sudden they get it all at once.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique situation with Morgan Scalley stepping up because it is a big change going from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan Scalley. First-year head coach, right? That's a new element that the program hasn't had to worry about for
long time.
But still the familiarity with who Morgan Scalley is, the fact he's been with the program since the mid-2000s as a coach, late 2000s, I guess, as a coach. There's still that feeling of it's the same old, right? That Utah football is just going to continue being what it's always been. And yet, from the moment Morgan Scalley coached in the Las Vegas Bowl to his introductory press conference to what we saw in spring ball, there is a little bit of a different mode of operation.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get your assessment on.
Yeah.
What have you noticed as far as any level of difference?
Yeah, going back to that bowl game, right? The on-field stuff first. That was our first exposure to Scalley as a head coach. I thought the offense was a little bit more aggressive. And obviously in a bowl game.
Awesome.
Yeah, in a bowl game, you're going to let loose a little bit and chuck the ball around, and that's what Utah did a little bit more. They took more vertical shots and capitalized on those opportunities. Then continuing into spring ball, I'll tell you, we had more access in spring than we've had under Kyle Whittingham in a long, it was a significant adjustment for us where we got to be up there multiple times a week watching full practices, not just 20 or 30-minute sessions. We got to watch entire sessions. And so it was that was new, and we continued to watch a lot of throw game. It wasn't as much run game stuff, and part of that too is just with it being spring ball. You're probably going to work on that. You're not going to go through the rigors of the run game stuff. But I do think everything that Morgan Scalley has said, where they want to maintain the physical, identity that they've built over the years, while also embracing the quarterback position and the passing game a little bit more. I think up to this point, everything we've seen so far suggests that they are going to kind of embrace that quarterback role. It was, at Big 12 Media Days, Pete Thamel had a little spot on Sports Center while they were talking about Utah, and that was the thing that they talked about, was the quarterback spot, that they haven't had somebody drafted, a quarterback drafted since Alex Smith, right? And that's going to be a major priority for Morgan moving forward, is that quarterback position specifically.
Yeah, that really is something when you think about it. And obviously Huntley has played in the NFL, so he made it. I don't understand why he wasn't drafted, but nevertheless, he did make it, and he was outstanding his senior year. There's no question about that. But you look at a program that has had that much success that hasn't had a quarterback stick, only one since Alex, even with all the success, it sort of blows your mind a little bit.
It really does. And obviously you can dive into the context of the situations, Travis Wilson going through the multiple coordinators, Jordan Wynn with the injuries, right? There's been context to it all, but it is shocking that you go 2 decades now without a quarterback drafted, especially given the success that they've had, recently even. And with the quarterbacks that have come through the program, Tyler Huntley obviously taking that massive step from 2018 to 2019, where he came from out of nowhere and had a Heisman campaign middle of the season opening up with his play. COVID struck, and that sort of hindered his draft prospects a little bit. But, Utah's found good players to play that role over the last few years. And I think with what they've got in Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin, they feel like they've got a pretty good shot of getting one of those two guys drafted over the next couple of years.
Anything else as far as Scalley? Because he is different, and he's I think system-wide, schematically, from the defensive perspective, we'll see what we've seen. But I'm just wondering, personality-wise, his imprint will be different because he's a different human being. He's just not the same guy. I'm just wondering if you've seen anything that we might be able to anticipate that way.
Yeah, a much more engaged and energetic operation in terms of just how he interacts with players, with boosters, with fans. There was yesterday, Albert Gamboa. If you're a Utah fan, you know who I'm talking about, but he's usually at every single game, home or on the road, wearing the big football hat, right? And he's had the opportunity. Morgan Scalley showed up to his house yesterday or over the weekend just to mingle with one of the diehard Utah fans. And, that went out across social media, Instagram, Twitter, that Morgan Scalley went out and visited Albert. And, I can't recall Kyle Whittingham going to a random fan's house and spending a day with them, just mingling, right? And then Mark Harlan shared this in his media availability at Big 12 Media Days is, obviously with the environment that we're in now in college athletics, where it's all about money, right? And generating revenue opportunities, sponsorship deals, NIL opportunities for players. Morgan Scalley hasn't just been involved in those meetings. He's been the one that's been pushing for them and, volunteering himself to go to these meetings and meet with these people and try to, generate greater interest. And I think that, above all else, is what Utah needed moving forward. Obviously with Kyle Whittingham, he's a legend. He's an established figure in college football. But with where this game is headed, having Morgan Scalley in place, given these new requirements where you have to operate more as a CEO off the field than just being a head coach, I think Utah really has the right guy in place to help them in that aspect. Yeah,
and that's important. Kenny Gillihan has been doing that down in Tempe.
Yes. Yep.
I've been following that, and you got to do it. You can't just say, oh, well, that's unbecoming. No, it's reality, and it must be done. All right, you brought up the quarterbacks. I believe if Dampier stays healthy and if he plays like he did against Nebraska, wow, look out. That is a conference MVP caliber player right there.
I agree. I think, he proved last year that he can handle the speed, the physicality of the Big 12. Obviously, operating behind that offensive line certainly helped in how he was able to adjust. Now it's going to be on him to kind of grab the cape that he had at New Mexico, where he was the playmaker. He had to create a lot of things. He had to overcome, offensive line deficiencies. He's going to have to do a little bit more of that. And so, this season is going to be about how much Dampier can marry the efficiency and sound decision-making he developed last year with that, playmaking and an individual creation that he showcased at New Mexico. That's going to be the key for him this season. And given what Coach McGivern has brought in terms of his offense, and with Ryan Gunderson, a quarterback coach who spent time at UCLA and Oregon State developing quarterbacks, they've talked about developing Dampier as a more well-rounded pre-snap and post-snap decision maker. And I think that is going to be the big thing for him for his development this year, is making sound decisions and reads pre-snap and making those quick decisions, getting the ball out quickly and to the right guy. That's going to be the key for him in unlocking his potential as a potential MVP candidate, first team, all conference type of guy. He's definitely in that conversation with the top four of Drew Mastemaker, Noah Fafita, Connor Wegman, Bear Bachmeier. Those guys, that's the top of the conference. And Dampier, given what they've added around him in that wide receiver room specifically, I think there's definitely a lot of room for him to emerge as that type of player.
I think they got a 1,000-yard rusher in Wayshawn Parker, and in talking to him at Media Day, I think he's out to prove that he's got the talent. It wasn't all the offensive line.
Yeah, I was watching film, over the weekend, and Wayshawn Parker, I was actually surprised at how often he had to create at the line of scrimmage. Given that offensive line and how we've come to talk about that group, and it was fantastic, right? Super elite in pass protection and run blocking. But Wayshawn had to create, around the line of scrimmage quite a bit. And not every single carry was that way, but, he has that ability to, navigate traffic around the line of scrimmage. And he's going to have to do a lot more of that this season. But the key here for Wayshawn and his ability to get to 1,000 yards is, one, the carry share. How many carries is he going to get? But Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin, being the threats that they are, is going to force defenses to remain balanced. They have to respect the threat of Dampier and Bird on those option reads, and that's going to help Wayshawn as he tries to get to 1,000 yards. But he definitely has that ability, right? He has that sneaky, home run athleticism where it doesn't look like he's a burner, but he's still pulling away from guys once he gets.
Guy.
Yeah, he's
reminds me of you.
A little bit, a little bit. He's got, it's not a full-on gut, but there's a little.
He's sturdy.
Yeah. So he is a talented player, and I think, as you mentioned, his mentality is going to be key to him this season and wanting to get to 1,000 yards, wanting to do all that he can to help Utah get these wins. Now,
Steve Bartle, our KSL Sports Insider for the Utes, you've heard this. We talked about the receivers for so many years, and they've got some new guys, and they got some guys that showed a little bit last year, and maybe they're ready to take a next step. But then you got oh my gosh, here we go again, and you know about this. There's a lot of skepticism with that receiver group. Why do you think that this could be different?
Yeah, last year Utah did a lot with what they had in Ryan Davis, Dallin Bentley, Larry Simmons. Things didn't click with others, but they still had players emerge over the course of the season. And this year for me, when I look at Braden Pagan's numbers, 920 yards,
coming
2
down
drops,
from Logan.
Caught it in traffic, in contested situations at a really high rate. I think he was a 55% completion rate in contested situations, which is great for him. His ability, his threat, getting vertical, getting into the intermediate is going to do a lot for the passing game. I think Utah's passing attack last year was just limited because, Ryan Davis was great working the intermediate and short areas of the field. Dallin Bentley, another intermediate and short area of the field type of target. It was a low ceiling, right? And this year with Braden Pagan coming in, Kyrie Scholes, these are guys that add some vertical stretch that are going to create opportunities like Larry Simmons, who had to operate specifically, almost exclusively, as the deep threat guy, him and J.J. Buchanan, because you had Dallin and Ryan, operating underneath. And so having that ability outside with Pagan, with Scholes coming in, it's going to create a little bit more flexibility in terms of who they can use in the intermediate and short areas of the field, which is going to open things up. So I think given the fact that you have a wide receiver one like Pagan, who has the proven production at Utah State, obviously it's got to translate, but the fact that he's coming with McGivern from Utah State, I think is a big advantage for him. And his presence will do a lot to help everybody else kind of find their role and kind of give McGivens some flexibility in maximizing their opportunities and how they utilize these guys.
All right, that's Steve Bartle. We will continue more with our discussion about Utah football. Stay with us right here on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
On the under $3 menu at McDonald's, a McChicken is $1.50. Because when you're craving a McChicken, you deserve a McChicken. And now that McChicken is just $1.50 with McValue.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
Slacker Radio headlines are brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN1 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. The headline today is football, and more college football. Joining us is Steve Bartle. He covers the Utes for KSLSports.com. We talked a little bit about the offense. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. We talked about, with change for Utah. I think this year I might have, I don't know if necessarily question marks is the right phrase, but intrigue maybe. Some newer guys who've been in the program, waiting their time, and now the time is here to see what they can do. So let's just start at all three. Up front, a kid like Carson Kafusi, a Cash Dillon. These guys have been in the program, but they got to step it up now.
Yeah, those are two guys that I think Utah is going to be counting on to step up. Carson Kafusi was a true freshman last year as a defensive tackle. Cash Dillon is going into his third year this year. Those are two players that have stepped up in different ways. I think Carson has really kind of taken grasp of the leadership role, being a vocal leader in that defensive tackle room and kind of, grabbing on. So that defensive tackle spot up at Utah, it's a prideful position group.
Sure, a lot of history.
A lot of history there. And I think Carson has really kind of latched on to that element and really tried to lead with that in mind. And again, this is a credit to our opportunity to see him up close in practice during spring, just the way that he was talking and getting after guys and going through reps. You could tell that he's carrying a different confidence about him and really embracing that leadership role. And with Cash, he is he's viewed as the guy opposite of Lance Holsclaw, who we've had the opportunity now to talk to him a couple times this offseason. He's had quite the offseason, and it's been really fun to kind of follow along with what he's been involved with going up to, Capitol Hill and being involved in those conversations. But with Cash Dillon, he is a physical presence, on that edge. And I think it's going to look obviously different going from John Henry Daly and Logan Fano, who were, had great first steps. They were guys that wanted to get pressure on the pocket, get pressure on the quarterback, get into the backfield and make tackles for loss. Maybe it's a little different this year with Cash Dillon and Ethan Day and Lance Holsclaw, where it's more about being physical up front and controlling the line of scrimmage, where you're limiting, rushing lanes and that. And I think Cash is really, he's got the body, the frame to play that kind of role. How much has he developed as a pass rusher? I think that's going to be the key for him, especially operating opposite of Holsclaw.
Linebacker, what's going on in that position? You had some graduation, obviously, there. Jonathan Hall still there, looking like he's ready to be the next, I don't know if I want to call star just yet. I want to see some more, but certainly the next playmaker. But just speak to that position and the other guys involved.
Yeah, the linebacker position has been headlined by a couple of guys. Lander Barton, Levani Demoody when he transferred in from Stanford. Yeah. And Jonathan Hall has just quietly sort of assumed more and more opportunity, more and more responsibility. And last year, he was the top producer on the defensive side of the ball. Led the team in tackles, was number 4 or 5 in pressures as a linebacker, getting more than Lander, who, that's how he operated, was kind of that stud backer, blitzing off the edge and those type of opportunities. He made plays in coverage, and really was a sound tackler. I think he had the second or third lowest missed tackle rate. So, there are a lot of encouraging signs when you're looking at what Hall was able to do last year. This year, it's going to be on him to lead the way, not just in that linebacker room, but as on the defensive unit as an entire unit. He's going to be that guy. And Morgan Scalley has talked about it over the years that, when you have players that are switching positions, and Hall switched from safety to linebacker a few years ago, it usually takes them 2 to 3 years to get comfortable. And in that third year, that's when it all has to come together, not just in terms of your understanding of the position and what you have to do, but everybody else is looking at you to be that guy. And I think that's going to be the key for Hall, is embracing that role, and just in the way that he's conducted himself this offseason, going back to spring ball and our interviews with him, media days, and how engaged he was with us, the media members. I think there are encouraging signs there, but they're going to need others to step up around him. Trey Reynolds has been another that's been in the program a few years. Yep. Cyrus Polu is a second-year player. He's a true freshman last year that I have really high expectations for. I expect him to kind of emerge as a playmaker as the season goes on. And then you're going to see other guys, Elijah Ellis, who another Ellis in that family tree. He's going to be a linebacker in that rotation. And so they're going to need others to step up around them. They're going to have to solidify the depth beyond that top 3 or 4. That's going to be really important for that linebacker group. But in terms of what they have in Jonathan Hall, I think there's a lot of confidence in what sort of step he can take forward this season.
Defensive backfield, you got some familiar names, Evans, Ritchie, Benny, losing Smith to go with Kyle over there to Michigan. I think it was a blow. Mm-hmm. But it happens, so you got to roll with it. No sense worrying about it. So they got some names. What do you expect there, and maybe some newer faces?
Yeah, I think if you're Utah, right, and you're looking at that group, losing Smith Snowden, a talent like that, an athlete like him, like that's definitely tough. But you had Scooby Davis emerge as a playmaker on the outside. I think he led the team, or he was second or third behind Jackson Benny, who led the team in interceptions. Scooby had a couple of pick sixes, one against Baylor and another against Kansas. So you feel good about bringing him back to man one of those outside spots. And I think what they learned last year was, bringing in Blake Cotton, who was a senior transfer from UC Davis, a lower level. It took him a couple weeks to kind of settle in. But right around that West Virginia game, he settled into that starting role and really became arguably the most disruptive in terms of what he was able to limit completion percentage-wise among the 3 cornerbacks, Scooby, Smith, and Blake. And I feel like there's optimism in who they brought in from the transfer portal to kind of replicate that same formula this year. So they brought in a couple guys, James Bobo Chenault, his nickname's Bobo, and he's going to be in that mix for one of those outside starting spots. And then another player is Elijah Reed, who they actually recruited a few years ago coming out of high school. He was a late bloomer, ultimately ended up signing with Kentucky. He transferred to Akron last year and really emerged as a solid starter at Akron. Transfers here to Utah, and he's going to be, I think it's going to be one of those two, Chenault or Reed, as the starting cornerback. But then, looking at those safeties, bringing Benny back, and as well as Evans and Ritchie, that's a big-time luxury. There's a lot of depth in that safety position, a lot of versatility with Benny. You can potentially get really creative with that group and how you can deploy them. And another name to remember here is Rock Caldwell.
I got him on my list.
Yeah. 6'3", 195 pounds. He's operating in the nickel. So he's got experience operating on the outside as a corner, also as a safety, and that sort of versatility. We heard it before spring ball and just kind of had those questions like, is he a 6'3" nickel? Is that real? And then seeing him operate in that role throughout spring, it looked really, really interesting. It added a lot of size compared to what we've seen in that spot, in years past, and really just led to a lot of disruption in the passing game. So they've got a lot of flexibility with what they can do with some of the guys that they have in that secondary, but I think they feel really confident that they're going to be able to continue their brand of ball in that secondary.
How many years with the pick six now?
Oh, 19?
19?
19, I think.
if I'm betting, I see no reason why not to bet 20.
I hear you. I hear you. They've got some dudes. They've obviously with Scooby coming back, Jackson Benny. Those are the two guys that had pick sixes. John O'Hall almost had one last year as well.
Did Barton have one?
Barton had one the year before.
The year before, okay.
Yep, the year before against Iowa State. It took him a while to get to the other end of the field, but he was pretty gassed. But he got there. So yeah, that was the one that actually extended. That was late in the year. Where it was like, are they going to get it? And Lander came through against that Iowa State game. I think that was like the second to last game of the season.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember which year, but I know, and I remember the run and all that stuff. But I'm definitely expecting them because on the defensive side, I mean, I know that they brought in a new coach because they made the change with Swan moving up and all. But you still got Sharif there. It just seems like they got a lot of continuity on that side of the ball offensively because of Kyle taking most. I think Atawaya was the only returner as far as a coach there. Defensively, maybe some newer names, which is exciting to see some newer guys to see how they can develop. But I feel confident in the staff being able to develop those guys. But they back end, and then obviously Powell took off on the front end.
Yeah.
But from that perspective, Shaw gives me a lot of level of comfort of here's a man who played the position, obviously at the school, and is a great talker, a great communicator, always fun to talk to, and knows his stuff on how to teach what they're looking for. And it seems like I've covered a lot of coaches over the years. I don't know that I could say anybody has had a tighter relationship with his players than Sharif Shaw.
He is a special human being. When you get the opportunity to just sit down and talk with him, he is one of those guys that you're just drawn to him because of how personable he is, how charismatic he can be. You
see why he was a lawyer in a courtroom.
Yeah. And that obviously translates to his relationship with his players.
Yeah.
And, for Morgan, naming him the associate head coach, I think was, valuable in so many ways because Shaw is the person that can keep Scalley, right? Like that checks and balance type of relationship, right? And I feel like that's valuable. Holding on to Mark Atawaya and naming him the assistant head coach, I think is a nod to him and what he did his first year here last year. What Scalley's also done, bringing in Chad Bumpus, who spent a couple years here prior, during those Rose Bowl seasons, those Pac-12 championship seasons, there's familiarity there as well. And then obviously with Jordan Gross, Scalley and him were teammates all the way back when. So there's familiarity there. And two, with the players in that room, Gross has been around the program so much that the players have known him. They've developed a relationship with him, and that sort of helped Utah in hanging on to them as Harding left for Michigan. And, defensively, Scalley was able to hold on to more of that side of the ball with Shaw and Swan and Coach Ellis, bringing in Derek Odom, former Utah player.
Sure.
I think Scalley was coached under him or coached beside him. I can't remember specifically. And then Enoke Brechterfield. So it's an interesting staff, but there's still a lot of continuity, familiarity with one another. And I think the fact that he's honored, Shaw and Atawaya, and those two personalities that they have in those roles, I think is sort of indicative of just kind of the overall vibe that Scalley is trying to create with his staff.
Oh, I think that's a fact, yeah.
Those two are, they're energetic, they're loud, they're emotional, they're really good with their players, and I think that is something that Scalley is really trying to grasp a hold of.
And I think, too, not that Kyle cast a negative long shadow, but he cast a shadow.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to show we can do this, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is that buy-in. And, given the opportunity this year with what they're bringing back on the field with, Dampier and Bird and Wayshawn, some of the players that they've brought in through the transfer portal, they feel like they've got a pretty competitive squad, and they can do exactly that, to say, hey, we can do this too.
Yeah. All right, one more segment with Steve. Stay with us. We will get to that next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're talking Utah football right now. Steve Bartle, a KSL Sports insider, joining us. Steve, if I ask you, and I will ask you, how many first-team all-conference performers do you think that is on this team, offensively, defensively, whatever it might be?
Yeah, that's a great question, PK. There's first of all, a lot of good players in the Big 12 this year. And like we were talking about to start with Devin Dampier, I think he's somebody that can certainly put his name on that first-team ballot. His partner in the backfield, Wayshawn Parker, he has that sort of potential this year. But again, there are so many good quarterbacks in this league, so many good running backs, probably even more good running backs this year. So it'll say a lot if those two get those nods. Braden Pagan, wide receiver, I think he's somebody that can put himself on that list. And if he does, it's probably because Dampier is also on that list.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know that Utah has somebody on that offensive line that can break through this year, given what's in the league this year at offensive line. Texas Tech has a great line. Cincinnati, BYU, those three, programs lead the league in offensive linemen this year, where Utah was leading that race last year.
Yeah, no question about that.
Defensively, Jonathan Hall, I think, will have a case. Jackson Benny, I think he has he's got his name out there enough where if
he's coming from a good starting point.
Yep. And just like there are a lot of good defensive backs in this league as well. Putting that all-conference, that preseason vote for all-conference team was really tough. You have to leave off really good players throughout the league.
I think Davis might have a shot.
Scooby, I think if he has another year like he did last year, building on it, where he gets a couple interceptions, maybe takes one back, gets those PBUs, he'll be in that conversation, but he's going to have to really improve kind of how sound he is. Jackson Benny, I think, is the best option in that secondary to kind of emerge as that first conference all guy. So I think you're looking at probably 5-6 guys first team. I think you'll have more potentially second and third team. I wish the Big 12 would give us an opportunity to vote on second team. That would allow a lot of the local beat writers to kind of shine a light on the teams that they cover, that they're around, right?
Yeah.
With how they have it structured, you only get to vote on one team. And if you're not doing your job, it's just, the default answer is who's the best players. It just doesn't allow us to shine a light on the local guys that we cover on our beat. So I would love to see the Big 12 give us the opportunity to vote first team and second team, all conference preseason. That way we get more of these players opportunities.
Okay, I'll call your mark today.
Yeah, please. Please do.
Football and college sports, it's never ending with recruiting, and you got this season, but you're preparing at the same time for down the road. And I know you and Mitch Harper, who does it for BYU, you guys are experts at this. Just give us an update as far as where they are recruiting. Yeah,
Utah, really did a lot of work in the month of June. And
seemed like they were getting commitments almost every day.
It was, we got to those final couple weeks of the month, and it was like a couple per day almost.
Right.
And so Scalley definitely got it going in that month. I think they finished right around 20 commits, which is significant because they entered the month with only 3 on the commit list. So, they really did a good job of hitting some pipeline states. Obviously, the focus was here within the state. I think they landed 7 or 8 players from within the state: Diesel Dart, Ian Aloisio, Fui Vakapuna, Jackson West out of Corner Canyon as well. He's somebody that I'm really high on. I think he'll see, if he gets more opportunity on that defensive line, I think he's going to be somebody that we see, when it comes December and these recruiting ratings start to get those bumps, he'll be one of those guys. They hit the state of Texas and the states of Arizona and a couple other states as well, but really hit the pipeline states, but focused on the talent within the state. And I think that's big for Scalley because his message has been, he feels like he can create a championship contender primarily due to the talent within the state. And we've seen it over the years. The talent has grown, not only on the top end, but the depth of talent in the state of Utah has just grown exponentially. So to build your foundation, his first year as the head coach with such a heavy focus on in-state talent, I think is just going to help them moving forward beyond this year. But they got a lot of good players, and with signing day, the early signing period not coming until December, a lot of work to do still on adding some pieces to the class, also defending and keeping other programs away and keeping guys committed. Long ways to go, but they'll I know that they feel pretty good about what they've done so far.
If I were to do a poll right now, I think there's, to me, is top three. I go Tech, BYU, Utah, my top three, and probably in that order. But that would mean that the Utes are right there. What do you think as far as the top three? Are there, or is there enough separation that it looks like when we get to December and everything is said and done, when we have the two teams playing at the Cowboy Stadium, that'll be two of those three?
Yeah, I think I share the same top three. I think it's Tech, I think it's BYU, and I think it's Utah. Obviously, with Utah, they have a lot of questions, more so than the other programs.
Right.
But with Tech, they have the biggest question at that quarterback position, right? Does it click with why am I blanking on his name? Will Hammond, right? BYU, they've got questions with the wide receiver position. What if LG Martin struggles with injuries this year and that running back depth? They have a lot of answers, right? They bring back a significant portion of their defense. Utah, obviously, with continuity that they have with Dampier and Morgan in that, but they have a lot of spots to fill. So when I look at those top three, I look beyond them and look at Houston, Arizona, and Kansas State as three programs who, Arizona they bring back really important pieces, but they've got a tough schedule. Houston, they bring back a lot of good pieces, and really kind of emphasize the line of scrimmage, which is key. They have a pretty manageable schedule. Obviously, starts week 3 with Texas Tech. They come to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
That's going to define their season.
Right.
And then Kansas State is kind of a wild card for me. Colin Klein, obviously, first year, but you look at that schedule, it's so manageable for them. They were in a lot of tight games last year, lost a lot of one-score games.
Right.
Many of which came down to the fourth quarter, the final minutes, like the Utah-Kansas State game last year.
Yeah.
I think they have an opportunity to kind of be that team that we see go from the bottom and kind of flip the story that following year. So I have those three that I think can challenge those top three.
Yeah, you speak of, and that's what's so cool about this conference, is that what do you do in these one-score games? Now you look at Houston, man, they just about everything went their way with those one-score games. And can it be repeated? Can it be replicated? It seems like it's hard to be able to do that. And maybe Houston can do that. I'm not saying that they can't, but you just wonder their level of the ball bounce their way, whatever it might be in that particular season. And so I know like 2 years ago, the Devils, man, they were winning close games every freaking week.
Right.
And I know they had some injuries last year, and 6-3 is okay, but they weren't able to reproduce as good as they were because close games make me wonder, which as a fan and as a media member, I like. Yeah. Because that means, wow, it's exciting, and there's so many games that could go either way. But I do think those three teams I'm comfortable with. The other teams, I buy your reasoning. We'll see, particularly Arizona, because I think Fafita, I think he's the best passer in the conference. If he were 6'2", he wouldn't be at Arizona.
No.
He'd be in the NFL.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's that type of player. And with Arizona State, that schedule, all of your tough games are on the road, right?
I know. Right.
Texas A&M,
it's not conducive.
Tech, BYU, Arizona, they're all on the road. And that's kind of the difference between Arizona State and Utah is that all their tough games are at home.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that could make a difference. And
almost all of their tough games.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. All right, that's Steve Bartle. That is our Ute Conversation. You can follow him the rest of the season at KSLSports.com and his social media, Twitter, and all that stuff. What's your handle and all that?
At Bartle, KSL Sports.
Yeah, very simple to remember. I've seen him out there. This guy, game day, is running around with his head cut off, trying to do everything on the field, over wherever the fans might be, what is happening, because we've had game day and Fox Big Noon, and I think game day, you drop about 7 pounds of just the sweat of you running all over the place.
Easily. Dude, I've dropped 15 pounds since media day.
These guys are hard workers. I got to give it to them. Both he and Mitch do a heck of a job. So there you go. All right. Thanks for listening. Stay with us. We got Scotty and the Coach coming up next right here on KSLSports.com.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did she have to fight a dragon?
Nope. She bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on...
Car
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.